Story 1. I loaned him money and he seemed to forget about it. He took a trip to Europe. When he came back, I asked him for the money. After he eventually paid me back, he cut off communication. I was not invited to his wedding. We had been close friends. Story 2. I mostly stopped being friends with my childhood boyfriend in high school. As an adult, while I was watching my father die and she knew it, she was messaging me about a crush she had after her second divorce. It made me see she never cared about what I was going through. Story 3. When they constantly hung out with other people and never invited me. Story 4. I noticed that friendship should feel easy, but with them it felt like a job. Story 5. They only get in touch when they need something or a favor. Story 6. She never reached out to me when I was sick, in the hospital, or after my father died. Story 7. It is exhausting when I am always the one who has to maintain the relationship or initiate contact. Story 8. They completely dropped me as if I were burning their hands when I was going through the worst period of my life. Fuck you, Sam. Story 9. They celebrated my failures louder than my wins. That's not love. Story 10. The jokes became lame to me because I realized I was always the punchline. Story 11. He started dating my girlfriend. I got rid of 2 people at once. Story 12. I knew her for 15 years. She would always cancel plans with me. When I talked to her about it and asked if she still wanted to be friends, she always said yes. I was foolish enough to believe her. She was a coward and I resent that. Story 13. She called to ask if I could take care of her newborn so she could go out and party every weekend. No thanks. It's your child and your responsibility. Story 14. The double standards and empty promises were exhausting. I was expected to drop everything for them at any time, yet when I asked for the smallest thing I was called toxic and demanding. I was expected to be available at all times while they were too busy to do the same for me, despite my working full-time and them being unemployed at the time. I went all out for birthdays and Christmas because that is my love language. I never expected the same in return, but it would have been nice to receive a card or a heartfelt text on my birthday. They demanded compromises and loyalty only from me and never offered the same in return. I do not think they would know what loyalty means even if someone tattooed the definition backwards on their forehead for them to see in the mirror every morning. Moral of the story. Do not invest more time in someone than they are willing to invest in you. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time, because words can be empty but actions are clear as day. Story 15. Her kids told me everything. I found out she speaks badly about me to them. Story 16. When I was going through cancer and chemotherapy, that experience revealed who my real friends were. Sadly, I lost many so-called friends. These were people I had supported through their tough times. To add salt to the injury, instead of asking how they could support me, I was asked to watch their children, drive them around, and so on because I was home undergoing chemotherapy and supposedly had the time. Screw you all. Story 17. Instead of talking to me directly about any concerns she had, she filed a complaint with Human Resources. Be an adult and have a conversation. There is no friendship left after this. Story 18. It happened twice. The first was when he ghosted me after 10 years of friendship. He had been the best man at my wedding. The second was when I realized he had known about my ex's affair the whole time and did not tell me until he and my ex had a falling out. Story 19. I was finally diagnosed as an adult with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and started medication. I decided to go back to school. When I received my first semester grades, I was thrilled to see I had earned a 4.0 GPA. I never in my wildest dreams thought that was possible. I told her how excited I was. The very next day she texted me that she did not like what Adderall had done to me and that she did not like that I was being successful. We had been friends for about 5 years. Story 20. It took 40 years. When we were 18, he made a stupid comment about me that shook me for years. When we were 58, he made another comment that took me back 40 years. Story 21. They used police tactics to set me up for failure, to have me murdered, and to drug me. They made up stories so cronies would have a reason to attack me. They set up someone on TikTok to target me. If you are asking directly, when I realized my friend was not a true friend, he is dead. Story 22. They planned a trip the week before my bachelorette party, did not invite me, and then canceled their attendance at my getaway 2 days before it happened because they were still tired from the previous weekend. Story 23. I knew she wasn't a real friend when she borrowed my favorite top, and it appeared on her Instagram with the caption, "New outfit." Girl, new where? My closet. Story 24. She was never happy for me or celebrated my achievements. She always put others down to make herself feel better. The moment I cut contact with her, I felt much lighter. Story 25. I realized they were not my real friends when I was out sick for a whole week, and they never checked in or asked how I was doing. When I came back, they acted as if I had never been gone. That is when it hit me that I was not really part of their group. Story 26. They would not forgive or forget, nor would they talk it through to reach agreements in the moment. Instead, they pretended they had forgiven and forgotten. Imagine someone told you it was no big deal that you accidentally spilled a drink on them, and months later they made passive-aggressive remarks or took actions because they believed you had done it on purpose and wanted revenge. I am grateful I am no longer part of that friend group because it was emotionally draining. They would remember every small thing that had happened months earlier, try to humiliate each other or make each other feel bad out of the blue, and justify it by saying, "You did this to me. You deserve what I am doing to you." Story 27. They kept pressuring me to lend them items, and I was not getting them back. They were taking items without returning them and thought it was acceptable because I earned more money than they did at the time. I also had many more bills, so I did not have much more than they did. People really suck. Story 28. I had a friend who cheated on his girlfriend and lied to me to cover it up. I was closer to her, and I realized he was using me to hurt her. He is not a friend to either of us. Story 29. It was not a single event but a process. She gradually stopped replying to my texts and ignored me for months. One day I realized she was not the kind of friend I wanted. Story 30. When you have problems, you will know who your real friends are. Story 31. I loaned him £2,000 over 6 months while he was looking for work. When I asked for it back, I had been laid off, had a car payment due, and my electricity had stopped working. I was ghosted and blocked on everything. Fuck him. Story 32. I realized I kept recreating my abusive family dynamics in my friend groups. Narcissists and their flying monkeys would bond by mocking, putting others down, or minimizing accomplishments. Every time, at some point, I would get rude back instead of playing it off. Everyone gets tired of being a punching bag eventually. I grew tired of spending 6 hours listening to everyone's problems while I drove, bought drinks, paid cover charges, and took profile pictures of women who would call me boring and selfish for daring to bring up something from work for 20 minutes. After enduring that repeatedly, I no longer knew how to make friends. I avoided people and went through a lot of therapy. Maybe someday I can make a real female friend again. Story 33. It was completely one-sided. I was there when they needed to talk and showed up to hang out. When I needed to talk or wanted them to hang out, there was always an excuse and my issues were none of their concern. Story 34. In 8th grade, my friend told me that people are only friends with you because they pity you. I do not know what led her to say that, but that sentence has been burned into my brain forever. I am 22 now, almost 23. It still hurts sometimes. Story 35. When I learned this, I fell into the curious bracket of close enough to help them move, but not close enough to get invited to the wedding. Story 36. He hooked up with another friend's girlfriend at a festival, then played the victim when everyone called him out for being a sleazebag. Story 37. We studied together in one city. After finishing our degrees, I moved to another city, but every 6 months I visited her to spend time together. For a while I waited for her to call and invite me over as before. I had been inviting her to my place, but she did not want to come, and she never called. Then I realized I was the only one trying to maintain the friendship. Another close friend lived in a different city, about 6 hours away by car. We chatted every day, and one day a friend sent me a screenshot from Instagram showing that she had come to my city with friends. I do not know if others would feel the same, but I was extremely sad and disappointed that she had not written to tell me. When I confronted her, she said she had been with her friends and thought we would not get along. After that, I could not look at her the same way. In the last case, which I think is common, a friend left me for her boyfriend. She stopped texting me. When I wrote, it took her at least 6 hours to reply even though she was online. I suspected she might be seeing someone, and after a year of being ignored, when I asked how she had spent her holidays, she admitted she had had a boyfriend for almost a year. I am not very lucky with friendships. I always seem to care more than my friends, but I believe that someday I will meet someone who will be as committed as I am. Story 38. It took me too long to realize he only called when he wanted something, usually a ride because he and his roommate did not have cars. He called me late one Thursday night asking me to drive him to his friend's house 2 hours away and to pick him up a few days later. There was no emergency. He literally wanted me to be his chauffeur so he could hang out with his friend. I said no. He became angry and said I was being a bad friend. I told him to look up a bus schedule and hung up. That was the last time I ever talked to him. He tried to call me a few months later, but I did not answer. I would like to believe he was calling to apologize, but I am sure he was just trying to get a ride, as always. Story 39. I finally realized I was unknowingly a part of a competition, not a friendship. Story 40. When I realized I was their unpaid therapist and not their friend. Story 41. He ignored me all the time, always made up excuses when I tried to hang out, avoided me during recess by spending time with other people, and mocked me behind my back. Story 42. It hit me when I realized they only reached out when they needed something. When I was struggling or needed help, they were nowhere to be found. Real friends are there even when it is inconvenient for them. Once you see that imbalance, it is hard to unsee. That was the turning point for me. Story 43. She threw a pool party, posted about it on social media, and did not invite me. Story 44. I was at a low point after losing my job and struggling with anxiety. He tried to help me get my life together but became angry when I actually made an effort. He repeatedly guilt-tripped and shamed me, saying I was making excuses and being lazy, even though I had started exercising and eating healthier. He pushed me to leave my comfort zone before I was ready. When I did, I had a severe panic attack in public. Instead of asking if I was okay, he shamed me again and said he wanted to end our 20-year friendship for the same reasons. He also avoided spending time with me, saying I would ruin the work he had been doing, while I only wanted to hang out and have fun, which might have helped my anxiety. Story 45. They reach out only when they need something, never just to catch up. When you invite them to do something, they always have an excuse. Story 46. She talked to me about others and spoke badly of them. When she suddenly ghosted me, I knew she had been talking about me too. Story 47. I found out he was not giving our contact information to other bands who asked who was filming them, while we were shooting his videos at cost because we were friends. Story 48. She posted me in her story, and whenever someone replied she asked who was prettier, which was so shady and insecure of her, to be honest. Story 49. They never went out of their way to help me as I did for them. It showed I was only a friend when they needed something. Story 50. He literally ran away from my side mid-sentence when he saw his new buddy across the parkway. Felt childish, but this man was 30. He just said, "Oh, there's Josh." And then he ran off toward his other friend. I stood there for a moment. When I realized he had forgotten me and was not coming back, I went back to my apartment, and we never spoke of it again. I do not claim to be awesome, but I do not need to be ditched as an adult. Story 51. He only wanted to be my friend when it was convenient for him or when I invited him to do things his parents could not afford. At school, he acted like I did not exist. He would not call or text me. In fact, he blocked me everywhere, yet he still wanted to hang out if we were going somewhere or at home, since we lived across the street from each other. For context, he had been my best friend since age 4. The problems began in middle school, and I kept going back because I thought that, since we had been friends for so long, he might grow out of it. I also hated to admit it, but I liked him a lot. I would have taken a bullet for him, but he would not have done the same for me, even though he said he would a few times. I was so naive. Story 52. When they violated a confidence to feel important and to be the center of attention on a day that was not about her. Story 53. I apologized and said I could not hang out because I had to study for finals. In response, he compared me to my abusive father. Story 54. They kept asking me for money and made elaborate excuses as to why they could not repay me. What cemented my decision was that they spent the exact amount of money in front of me and did not see the irony. Story 55. When my mom died, she sent a text before calling. When my dad died 8 weeks later, she texted me, "What the hell?" The day after he died was one of the hardest days of my life. She could not find 5 minutes to call me even though she knew how sad I was. A week later I pointed it out. Her apology was so hollow it did not compute. I had never made a tit-for-tat list until that day. I thought of all the times I was there for her and never expected anything in return. After the call I just sat there, then blocked her and wiped my heart clean of caring about her. It was not even a conscious decision. A switch just flipped and the light went out. She was my best friend. Story 56. I don't mind keeping secrets about your life. I always try to respect boundaries, and I think I do a good job at it. It's just strange when you ask me personal questions about my life but won't share yours. Story 57. They were not there for me during my lows but always showed up for the good times. A real friend shares your sorrow without keeping score. When you realize you are the only one investing in the relationship, it is time to close the account. Story 58. He did not actually care about me. He liked what I was doing and tried to take advantage of me. He thought I was trying to sabotage him while he was actively sabotaging me. Story 59. I got sober, stopped partying, and stopped playing therapist for people who refuse to address their own mental illnesses. I learned about codependency in therapy. I prioritized my physical rehabilitation after major surgery and was not available around the clock. Within a year, 80% of my friend circle dropped me, but the trash took itself out. Story 60. I have 3 major examples if you want to vote on who is the worst. Warning, the third example is long. 1. He borrowed my phone a long time ago when cell phones were rare. He tricked my then-girlfriend into sending him a number of nude photos while he had my phone. 2. I covered his deposit when we moved in together. I assumed he would repay me because I had helped him get his job, which he has now held for 5 years. I have not heard from him in 2 years, and he still owes me $900. 3. A friend was depressed about being stuck in the town where he grew up. His job was dead-end, and his wife had left him a year or 2 earlier. I was running a few security contracts, so I told him that if he wanted to start working his way up in the field, I would hire him and send him to training. He moved in with my fiancée and me in the spare bedroom. Instead of paying rent, I asked him to save his paychecks for 3 months and move out by then. It was a firm deadline because my father was planning to retire and move in with us to be around his grandchildren. When the 3 months passed, he did not have the money to move out. Instead, he spent $6,000 on a trip to Finland to visit his brother for 2 weeks. He expected to leave his dog and all his belongings at my house while he was gone. I told him my father was moving in, so everything would be gone by the time he returned. He later physically threatened my 76-year-old father when my father touched his things or his dog. I had to remove him from my house at gunpoint. I had known him since 8th grade. Story 61. When I confided in 2 of my childhood best friends about experiencing sexual abuse at various ages when I was a child, they made fun of me and said that I was enjoying it. I told them this when we were 24, and now we are 26 and barely in touch. Story 62. They were bitter and angry at me because of their own jealousy. A real friend deals with their emotions instead of blaming you. You cannot be friends with someone who is furious with you and insecure about your existence. It does not work. Story 63. I realized I was always the one reaching out and they never checked on me. Story 64. I am 3 years into my sobriety and a friend sent me pictures and videos of herself encouraging me to drink. I asked her to stop, but she continued sending alcohol-related content for 7 hours until 4:30 a.m. I blocked her. There was no coming back from it. It felt like she wanted me to relapse. No excuse could repair it. A friendship of more than 30 years was lost. As a symbol, I planted a seed for the lost friendship, and now a Japanese persimmon tree is growing. Story 65. They cold-shouldered me after I called them out and excluded me from activities. Story 66. She grabbed the hand of my fiancé and placed it on her breast while I was standing right there. I am pretty sure I will end up in jail if I ever see her in person again. Story 67. They only called when they needed something, never just to talk. Story 68. When I texted them to say I had to cancel a trip because my spouse needed surgery, I asked if I could call. They replied that they had just woken up and never followed up to ask how I was or about my spouse's health. The next day, they texted to complain about the hassle of getting a refund from the hotel they had booked. Story 69. They chose to side with my ex-wife without hearing my side of the story. I do not have any in-person friends anymore. Story 70. She could not even spell my name correctly after 6 years of knowing each other. I had mentioned it a couple of times in a light way, but it kept happening, and I finally lost my temper. Her excuse was that she did not realize it was important to me. That was when I decided that the problem was not me but her. Story 71. Passive-aggressive comments that she was too dumb to realize were obvious insults. Story 72. She was nonchalantly accusing me of stealing her wallet out of her bag. I do not remember where we went, but she dropped me off at home. About an hour later, she called me frantically, saying she could not find her wallet and that I was the last person she had been with. While I was still on the phone with her, she found it had fallen out of her bag and was lying behind her front seat. I gradually stopped all contact. She later texted me a long message asking why we were not talking anymore, saying we were best friends and that she missed hanging out. Whatever. Story 73. I had many major surgeries, lost my job, and felt very down. Every time I told my friend how I felt about the way she was treating me, she said it was hard to deal with people who were depressed. Story 74. She got wind of the amount of cash my dad had given me right before the COVID-19 pandemic to set myself up. I bought 3 4-bedroom houses and rented them. Then a man I had recently started seeing asked for a committed relationship. I did not tell him about my assets. I was maintaining the simple life I had before I had the money, and soon he proposed. My lawyer advised me to get a prenuptial agreement. When I told him, he became angry and accused me of not trusting him. I told him the prenup would be lifted after 15 years. In the middle of the argument, he lost his temper and demanded, "Then why would I marry you? Your friend trapped me so you could be spoiled for nothing." That is when I realized this was all a plan to take what I had. I cut her off for good and did not accept any of her apologies. Story 75. My 6th-grade best friend broke my trust by telling the boy I liked that I had a crush on him. He confronted me in the lunch line to ask if it was true. How does a 6th grader deal with that? The scene is indelibly seared into my brain. I never forgave her. Story 76. I grew tired of always being the one to send the first message and to ask to meet. One day I decided I would not send another message until he did, to see how long it would take him. I have been waiting since 2021. Story 77. When you always listen to them but they never really listen to you. Or when you feel betrayed, yet that same friend comes to you first, playing the victim to shift your attention away from what they have done. The worst part is when they only reach out when they need something. Other times, they do not even bother to check on you. You tell yourself, maybe she is just busy. That is why she is not messaging. But the truth is, no one is ever too busy for someone they truly value. If they had time for you before, they can make time now. They know you care, and they know you have a soft spot for them. That is why they do not leave you, yet they also do not come to you wholeheartedly. Story 78. In times of difficulty, I tried to reach out to vent, but they said they already had enough and did not want any more. Story 79. I considered a neighbor a friend. She called us best friends. During a very challenging time when I was struggling with mental health, instead of helping me get support, she turned her back on me. The issue I was having was also present in her own family, so she knew the circumstances. At one point, she ran into her house from the front yard and hid when I drove by. I never did anything to deserve that. Story 80. He was like a brother to me. We hung out around the clock and always had each other's back. I realized he was not a true friend when he started hanging out with both of my ex-girlfriends. He was dating one and trying to convince me to get back with the other. Worst of all, this happened while I was engaged and living with my fiancée, and he was going to be in the wedding. Both women stalked me and begged me to get back together. When I told him how manipulative they were and that they were using him to get to me, he called me arrogant and said they had moved on, among other things. He then bragged to them about how he had told me off. Within 2 weeks, neither of them was hanging out with him. We reconnected more than 10 years later, and he apologized and admitted I was right. We are nowhere near as close as we once were, but there is no point in harboring grudges. Story 81. It always felt like work to listen to her constantly talking about her ex, and I started to realize I was siding with him because she was behaving erratically. Then we went on vacation together. She paid for nothing and complained the whole time. Bye. Story 82. It took a couple of things. One was him blowing off a place that was really important to me. Then, when something big happened to me earlier this year, he could not be bothered. That was it. 20-something years of so-called friendship came to an end. It is actually a really good thing. Story 83. I once had a close friend who told me, after I split with my girlfriend, that she had offered him oral sex in exchange for cocaine. He told me only after the breakup. I never spoke to either of them again. Bullet dodged. Story 84. I noticed they only reached out when they needed something, not to genuinely connect or support me. Story 85. They betrayed me with everything I trusted them with. Safe to say, I no longer trust anyone. Story 86. I stopped looking for him, and that was it. I realized I was the real friend, not him. Story 87. I ignored many red flags, but the final one was when she sabotaged me professionally to get my ex, who was a terrible girlfriend but absolutely amazing at her job, fired. All the while she told me my ex was the one who used our personal life to get out of trouble at work. We all work together, which is why coworkers are not friends and definitely should not be romantic partners. She then took it further and tried to facilitate a mini coup against me when I refused to get my ex fired by telling her to do a no-call, no-show and encouraging other coworkers to believe I was playing favorites. I had no authority over any of these people. She told me she could not tell me the truth about that situation because it would be gossip and that she was trying to be professional. When I cut her off, she cried about being punished for her professionalism. She showed absolutely no responsibility or awareness. All of this happened because my ex reminded her of an ex she had years ago, and she refused to go to therapy to deal with the very obvious issues she was still having from that breakup. Story 88. He stole $500 and lied about it. We were roommates in college, and it was my rent money. Story 89. Summary. I wasn't worth standing up for in the end. A friend group we were both part of removed me because, gasp, I was trying to prioritize my mental health and get to a better place. Most of the group talked badly about me behind my back, and they pressured my friend into removing me from social media. She said I could remain friends with her. However, she kept my phone number under a different name, so she would not incur the wrath of anyone in the group. Gradually, our contact dwindled and we had fewer phone calls. One day, I looked at her Facebook page and her profile picture showed her posing with two of the more abusive people from the group. In the comments, she said they were two of the most important people to her. I blocked her at that point. I had asked her in the past to stand up and not let people walk all over her for being my friend, but all I ever really got was lip service. Story 90. When they decided I was supposed to be their therapist, I had not had therapy and they had been in therapy for decades. Somehow I am to blame for their issues. Sometimes it is easier to be alone than to deal with people. Story 91. This was in college. I met them for lunch to catch up after we had been apart all summer. I tried to get them to talk about what they had done, but they were upset about a few things and not feeling great. I kept prompting them to talk about what was bothering them, but they shut down every attempt. So I decided to respect their privacy and instead told them about my summer and my hopes for the new school year. I thought they might prefer a distraction. Later, a mutual friend told me that our lunch had been upsetting because I had only talked about myself and had not given them a chance to share. In the end, the differing perspectives on that lunch did not matter. The point was that we could not communicate. This was one of several instances, and we are no longer friends. The mutual friend, however, is still in my life years later, and we are closer than ever. Story 92. I make a point to be mindful, and I'm naturally a caring person. I've called friends on their court dates when they were sick or injured, when they started new jobs, during breakups, and so on. My mom passed 2 weeks ago, and not a single one of them called me. Story 93. After hundreds of women asked me to accompany them home for safety, then found men they wanted and disappeared, I realized they were using me as bait for their dating lives. As for men, most would have breakdowns and yell, "I can't be your friend if I can't be with you," and I would usually never see them again. I don't know what conditions or expectations they had. I never had conditions except to ask, "Can you be my friend without needing sex?" Where are those people other than my son? My husband seems able to have sex with me but not be my friend. He often says we can do things in the future, but it has been 20 years, so maybe it will always be a dream to do anything enjoyable. Story 94. She was prepared to cut contact with me because I didn't want to be around her cheating husband, whom she forgave repeatedly. They are now divorced because, surprise, he cheated with his friend's wife. Story 95. I told a friend I was thinking of asking someone in our circle out, and they wished me luck. An hour later, they texted to say they had tried to beat me to it and were rejected. Garbage behavior from a selfish human being. Story 96. She allowed her boyfriend to make too many wisecracks about me. If she invited me over for dinner, she never asked whether I could help clean up. She just expected it. She always made last-minute plans long after I had gotten comfortable and was no longer looking forward to going out. Story 97. I'll tell you. My friend knew she was in love and was in a relationship with a certain man. She began to show a strange interest in my relationship, so I distanced myself from her. I stopped following her for a while. When I checked back, she told me she had gone to my partner's business, a place for children's entertainment, and had taken her 3-year-old child. She said he noticed her a lot, and after a few days he began viewing her Snapchat stories. I thought, why does my friend want to attract the attention of the man I love? She insists that he sees her a lot on her Snapchat stories. Only bad women seek the validation of their friends' men. Story 98. I complained to someone about him, and they bluntly told me that his behavior was 100% narcissistic bullying. It did not take long after that to realize they were right. I started calling him out on it, and he pretty much left on his own. Story 99. I always felt terrible about myself after hanging out with her. She constantly planted negative seeds in my head. Then I found out she had been saying terrible things about me behind my back. Shocking. Story 100. I'm always the one who reaches out to my friends, so I am staying distant to see who reaches out to me first or consistently. They all forgot my birthday, which put me in a bad mood for a while. Story 101. This is all the same friend group. When a former partner cheated on me, stole from me, and broke me down mentally, they kept inviting me to gatherings where that former partner would be without informing me first. I moved to another state, and their contact with me dropped quickly. I became the only person to ever reach out to start a conversation or to send memes and similar messages. They came to visit once shortly after I moved. I invited them to stay at my place to save on hotel or short-term rental fees. They declined. I understood wanting privacy, but I did not expect them to assume I would be their personal taxi, driving them wherever they wanted to go. I dated a different woman I met through that friend group in my new state, but it did not work out. My former partner informed a few friends from the clique that we had split up. Those friends never once checked in on me but continued to talk to the newest partner daily. There are more incidents, but those are the first that came to mind. Some people in that friend group I had known since high school. As a man about to turn 30, I do not have time for people who show no respect or care for me. I am traveling back home for a wedding this upcoming week, and I have not informed a single person from that group that I will be there for the weekend. It is better this way. Story 102. When I discovered he was hiding something, bluffing, and making excuses instead of apologizing. Story 103. Anytime I brought a girl around, he tried every tactic to steal her from me. He put me down, talked over me, and stood between us. When we first became friends, we were about the same height, 5 feet 4 inches, 162 centimeters, and I was a bit chubby in the second year of high school. By my senior year, I had grown to 6 feet, 182 centimeters, but he stayed the same height. He later admitted the main reason he befriended me was to make himself look better by comparison. Story 104. After 30 years of friendship, she ghosted me. I had served my purpose and that was it. Turned out she did me the biggest favor. She was never my friend. I was just a useful idiot. Story 105. I had to wonder whether we were ever friends in the first place. Story 106. When my other friends learned the things I had told only to one friend. Story 107. When he kept criticizing and undermining me, both in private and in public, I switched off. It could be about anything, the topic of conversation, the person you want to date, the music you were listening to, or the film you brought. I walked away and never came back. He tried to reach out on Facebook a few years later and I blocked him. Story 108. When she was surprised that I was doing so well in college, since in high school my grades were not good because of emotional problems and mild depression, I realized then that she thought I was supposed to be the stupid one and she was my savior. Sadly, I brushed it off and tried to remain friends for several more years. A bad choice. I have not talked to them in 3 years. Story 109. When they promised they would help with a party and said they were coming, they later backtracked and claimed they had never said that. I never spoke to him again. Story 110. When we were discussing my movie from Hulu, I realized he had never watched it out of jealousy. Story 111. When she told my long-term boyfriend that she loved him, she then texted him outrageous lies to get his attention. We were 18 or 19 and she was about 16 or 17, so I attributed it to immaturity. I kept my distance and only spent time with her in group settings. Story 112. When I realized I was the last choice on her list, I understood she was almost never there for me, yet I was expected to drop everything whenever she needed me to listen to her relationship and life problems. She never truly heard me. I was expected to be her garbage bin, the place to dump everything and be happy about it. Story 113. The biggest giveaway was finding out he had been having sex with my girlfriend. There were probably other signs, but that was the final proof. Story 114. My wife realized it about her friend when the friend bought 2 tickets to see my wife's favorite musician, then overbooked herself 3 times that day and canceled on her. The friend offered 1 ticket to my wife for free but insisted that my wife pay for the ticket intended for me. My wife reasoned that no one wants to go to a concert alone, and this was not the first time the friend had been inconsiderate toward her. Story 115. When I moved from 5 minutes away to 30 minutes away, he promptly ghosted me. I was just a seat to fill at his board game nights. Story 116. He had sex with my girlfriend, who also turned out not to be my friend. Story 117. He didn't even care when I was sick. He said nothing and only texts me when he needs money. Story 118. He wanted me as a friend so he could feel superior to someone. It turns out he saw me as beneath him, and as long as he was doing better than me, he was happy. Story 119. She thought I did not deserve to have friends, a romantic partner, financial achievements, and so on. So I said goodbye. Story 120. When my husband had major surgery, he was in the hospital for 5 days and did not even receive a text. Story 121. I finally realized I did not like who I was when I was around him. I feel I am a better person and kinder to myself now that I have cut ties with him. Story 122. My friend found out her boyfriend was cheating on her. They got in a huge fight. Then they made up and she told him she still loved him and asked if he still loved her. He said he pleaded the fifth, refusing to answer to avoid getting in trouble. She still had sex with him immediately after. He said that. I told her he was just using her for money, her car, and sex, which he was. Then she ghosted me. Her mom told me a few months later that they had broken up. I reached out hoping to reconnect, and she never replied. I already knew she was not really my friend, and that confirmed it. 15 years later, we caught up on Facebook. A man got her pregnant about a year after she ghosted me, and he turned out to be a deadbeat father. She is still single, as far as I know, and her child is now in her 20s. She told me my husband is cute, and I had a visceral reaction. She has horrible taste in men, so I do not need her validation. My husband and I have been together for over 20 years. Story 123. I was pregnant with our last baby and texted her to ask how things were going for her, expecting her to ask how I was doing, so I could tell her about the baby, but she never asked. I did not tell her. A month later, I texted again and got the same response. I stopped texting her and we have not spoken since. She has no idea we had another baby. He is almost 18 months old. I realized that although she was always enthusiastic about hanging out, I was always the one to set it up. It was too one-sided for my taste. Story 124. 100% of the friends I lost were due to money in one way or another. I loaned money, but they never repaid it. I asked nicely, but they ghosted me while going on lavish vacations. People I hung out with almost every weekend, took vacations with, and went camping with eventually ghosted me over money they did not want to pay back. A few still have not repaid me, and I no longer ask, but they have not ghosted me yet. I have accepted that loaning money to friends means you either lose the friend or you never get the money back. I have yet to experience a situation in which a loan was repaid and everyone was happy. Story 125. I remember a favela resident saying he tests his friends' loyalty by leaving his wallet. If they take any money, they are not his friends. Story 126. She encouraged my ex-wife to divorce me after she said she would talk to her about working things out. Story 127. She sat me down at a party and said she didn't want to be friends anymore. Story 128. I was yelled at when my needs were ridiculed. She made fun of me for requesting reasonable accommodations at work. Story 129. I have had the same phone number for the past 20 years, but he never called me. Story 130. I actually overheard her talking about me to someone else. Story 131. He started doing shady little things and only contacted me when he needed something. I tried giving him the benefit of the doubt, but after a while I noticed a pattern. We go to the same clubs and know the same people, so if I see him I say what's up and then talk to other people I know. Story 132. When he left me for dead after things got rough because of some poor decisions I made while hanging out with him, I will note that those were my decisions alone and I have taken full blame from the start. We had been friends for decades and shared many experiences. In retrospect, I was almost always the initiator of contact and plans. Over the years, I folded him into my social circles, invited him to countless outings, and relied on him as my go-to person for major life events. But he rarely did the same for me. It hurt in a way I had never felt before to not hear from him for weeks after that mistake. I decided to put in only what I got out. After a few half-hearted, mostly self-centered attempts at contact from him, to which I replied tersely, all communication dropped off once he realized things were not peachy keen on my side. All that history, time, and energy, poof, gone when one half of the friendship could no longer or would not carry the lion's share. It still amazes me that such a relationship can end in a whimper instead of a bang. Story 133. They talked badly about other friends to me, and I figured they probably talked badly about me to them. When I finally had enough and told those friends what they were doing, they called me a liar and acted as if they had never done it. They only wanted me around when it was convenient for them. I regret how things ended, but not that they ended. Story 134. When I was going through a divorce, I had caught my husband cheating in the act. I met someone and brought them around, and my friends stopped talking to me. It was strange to have years of friendship suddenly end. No one talked about it. They simply stopped communicating. Story 135. They only showed up in good times and disappeared when I needed support. A real friend's actions match their words. This person never did. Story 136. She moved 15 minutes away by car and did not make much of an effort to hang out or stay in touch. Story 137. He cut off all contact with me because I did not have the same plans for the future as he did, and I went to a different school. Story 138. She used my seizures against me when we had misunderstandings or arguments. She said I used her to drive me everywhere and did not give her gas money, even though I always offered, bought her food, went to appointments, and ran errands with her because I cared. I do not like people who argue to win and use things I cannot control against me. Story 139. I ended 2 friendships with toxic people in the friend group, and even after I explained everything, the others kept hanging out with those people. Story 140. It was pretty mild, but when I told her I was a vegetarian, she immediately tried to shove orange chicken into my mouth. We had picked up food from Panda Express, and she noticed I did not have any meat on my plate. I was surprised and thought, what the heck? Story 141. They remained close friends with the person who sexually assaulted me. Story 142. I had a friend for 12 years who I thought was close. Over time, we moved to different cities but kept in touch. We visited each other a couple of times a year and called semi-regularly to check in. I live in a large city with a lively nightlife. She lives in a smaller town. I have had some life changes. I moved in with my partner and began planning to have a family. She remains in a partying cycle that has not slowed down in her mid-30s. She often visits and has a key to my house. I do not party as much anymore, but I do not mind her going out and crashing at my place after I am done for the night. About 10 months ago, she visited over Halloween weekend. We went out together. After our night out, I went home and she went to another club. She returned to my place with a random man, tried to sneak him into my house, and lied about it the next day. She left used condoms around the house and my cat found them. I asked that in the future she go to the man's house instead of bringing a one-night stand to mine. I then became pregnant, a life event I had wanted for many years. My mother and sister planned a baby shower months in advance and invited my friend. She said she would attend, but on the day of the event she did not show up. There was no message and no call. She had not forgotten because she texted another friend saying she was deciding whether to go because she had tickets to a concert. That day she posted provocative photos on social media and went to the concert. She said nothing for weeks, until her next visit to my city when she asked, "What are you up to next weekend?" I realized we have grown apart, have different values, and that she may have been using me for a place to stay. Story 143. I was close friends with a woman, and every so often she would ask me for loans. I was happy to help. We had many conversations over 8 years in which she promised to start saving. Last November she asked me for another loan. I refused and told her I would not support her poor choice of not saving despite having the means to do so. Since then she has tried to guilt me to change my mind, but I have stood my ground. She has not reached out in months. Good riddance. Story 144. She did not show up as my witness at our courthouse wedding. She said she had decided to work extra hours because she already had the day planned. Story 145. Once he got a girlfriend, I hardly saw him anymore. Even after they had been together for more than a year, I still had not met her. Story 146. I had a friend while growing up, from ages 10 to 20, from 1999 to 2009. We became best friends shortly after we met and hung out 3 to 5 days a week. We did everything together, from playing on the playground to going to bars when we were older. To clarify, I am from Europe, and in my country young teens start going to bars at 15 or 16. The legal drinking age is 18, but nobody cares about that. If you do not make a mess of the bar or yourself, you can drink as much as you want. We had sleepovers at each other's houses many times. My parents liked him and his parents liked me. We often hung out with other people in town, but we always stuck together and never left the other alone. We were truly best friends. He found a girlfriend around 19 and suddenly did not have time to hang out anymore. I realized falling in love and having a partner alters your brain chemistry, especially that young, and that the relationship becomes a big part of someone's life, and I respected that. I did not expect us to hang out as often, but I did not understand the lying and ghosting. In the first 3 months, he did not have a single hour of spare time for a coffee because he was with his girlfriend. I called him about 6 times in that period, and he never called me once. I continued to call about every 2 weeks. He gave excuses. Out of town, sick, working, doing this or that. My other friends told me he was with his girlfriend in a bar or park or hanging out with our friends when I called. About 6 months in, I confronted him in a bar full of people after I heard he was there. He lied about being somewhere else. I sat down, greeted him, and asked what the problem was between us. He said nothing. He had a guilty, apologetic look and shrugged his shoulders. I asked, "Is that it?" After all we had been through, you have nothing to say. Tell me I am a stupid idiot and that you hate me, and I will respect that more than your shoulder shrugging. Nothing. I told him we were over. After that, I never hung out with him again. I was sad, angry, and feeling betrayed, but I quickly realized he did not deserve me as a friend. I saw him out in town a couple of times after that, but could not care less. If he had any remorse, he would have approached me or called. A couple of years later, he moved to another country for 14 years with that girl. A month or two ago, he returned to town intending to stay indefinitely. My cousin, who works in town, bumped into him and told me. I do not know if he is still with that girl, married, divorced, or has children, and I do not care. I have no intention to reconnect, even if he calls. After 16 years, I do not care what he has to say. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.